Hey everybody, welcome back to GarageBand Guitarist, and what I'm going to do in the next couple lessons here is some material that I'm going to call optional, okay? Right now, I'm hoping that what you're doing is working on practicing those bar chords. It's so important to get those down, and they're a little difficult, so you really need to spend a little time with them. And so what I wanted to do is do a couple of topics that don't require you to learn something new to play on the guitar right now, so you can focus on those bar chords and those bar chord songs, okay? These topics are both interesting and useful, but do you need to know them right now as we're learning? No, but they tend to come up about this point when people are to the point of learning bar chords and things. They start to wonder about these topics, and so I thought I'd cover them for those of you who'd be interested in learning about them now. Others of you can launch ahead on with the next material when you're starting to feel reasonably comfortable with the bar chords, and you can come back to these sometime later. You know, they're there for you whenever you'd like. So the two topics are memorizing the fretboard, so knowing what all the notes are across the whole fretboard, and the second one is about using capos, okay? And so this one's gonna be about memorizing the fretboard, okay? Now, it's natural to think about that at this point in the course, because when you're playing those bar chords, you want to know which one you're playing. Or if I say to play a B bar chord or a C sharp bar chord, you got to know where to put the bar to do it, right? And so, it makes you think about the notes on the guitar, especially on the fretboard, especially the ones on the first two strings, which are used to name to identify the bar chords, either the E form, in which case the notes are on the E string, or the A form one, the notes are on the A string. And so you kind of want to at least know all the notes on the E and the A string, so you know where to get an E form B bar chord, which would be here, okay? Or you want to know where to get a C sharp A form one, which would be here. And if you know the notes on all those frets for all of those strings, then you'll know where to place those bar chords. That's why it tends to kind of come up at this point. So let's go ahead and talk about all of those, not just those two strings, but how to get at the notes on every single fret across the fretboard, okay? By the way, there is in the description here a little chart that helps you, that's going to help us with this lesson. Now, you don't necessarily need to download it and print it out before you go through this lesson. In fact, maybe you should go through it once without having it in front of you, because it kind of looks like a lot. Wow, look at all those notes. And, looks complicated. It won't seem so complicated after we kind of run through it once. But if you want to print it out ahead of time, please do. But print it out at some point. It'll help you. It'll help you understand and memorize these notes. I will flash them up on the screen, though, as I usually do when we're going along, and explain what's going on. Okay? All right. Now, let's do a couple of reminders of things that we already know, that we've already covered in the course up to this point, that are the foundation for learning all of these notes on the fretboard. Okay? First of all, the notes of each of the 6 strings, right? And I hope we have those memorized by now, because you need those to tune your guitar, and they help us find the other notes and chords that we've been working on. So you may have this down already, but just to remind everyone, the notes are going from lowest to highest: E, A, D, G, B, and then E again. A higher E on the top. Same as the bottom note, but higher. Okay? Now, and I gave you in one of the lessons some ways of trying to remember that. People have come up with lots of cute little phrases. I think one I told you was elephants and donkeys grow big ears, right? And there's other ones. I just always, it's easy for me to remember that there's an E on each end, same note, E. And then, and then I can remember the next one's A, and then 3 in the middle. That might be a little more trouble, but like DGB, that just kind of flows easily to me. DGB, DGB, DGB. And so I've got E, A, DGB, then I'm back to E. E, A, DGB, E. Okay. However you can get that in your head, get it in your head so you know which one each of these is. Okay, that's going to be important in terms of how we're going to approach memorizing the rest of the fretboard. Okay. All right. Second reminder, half steps and whole steps on the fretboard. Remember that each fret is a half step. So as we go up, we're going up a half step every time we do one of those frets. You can figure things out in terms of what all these notes are if you can remember that there's a half step between each one of these and that there's a whole step between the letter notes, most of them, okay? So between A and B, there's a whole step, which is 2 half steps. So if you know this open string is an A, you know that a B can be found by going up a whole step, 2 half steps. So A, 1, 2. And now that's got to be a B because we've gone up a whole step from A. And you can use that method to find any note on the fretboard. Not fast, but you can do it. Like if you want to know what this thing is up here, you can count up the steps up to that note. You've got to remember, though, that there's a whole step between most of the letters, but not all of them. Okay, and I keep saying it as we go through the course, but every time we're going from B to C, I say nothing in between B and C, right? Because there's only a half step between B and C, not a whole step. Okay, so you got to remember B and C, and then between E and F, there's not an extra note in there. There's just a half step between E and F. So if you're going up from A to B is a whole step. B to C is a half step, only 1 fret. C to D is a whole step. D to E is a whole step, but E to F, nothing in between. E to F, there's only a half step, 1 fret, okay? F to G, a whole step. G to A whole step. Okay, so you've gone through the whole thing. And if you can remember that, you can find anything. You can find anything. So I'm on the G string, and I want to know where there's a D on the G string, okay? So G, the next letter is A, that's a whole step, so 2 frets, A. And then A to B, that's another whole step. So now I'm up on the 4th fret, that's a B. And then nothing between B and C, so only a half step. C, and then between C and D, there's a whole step. So there's D. That's a D. Ought to sound like my open D, except higher. And it does, okay? And so you can actually use that to find any note on the fretboard, okay? Well, we want to be able to do it faster than that, obviously. And so that's what we're going to try to get to when you're in this lesson as we go through some ways of trying to memorize this. But it's all based on that notion that you go up these whole steps and half steps depending on what notes you're trying to get to, okay? All right. All right. Now there's lots of ways to go about trying to memorize the fretboard. And you can go online and see people giving you all kinds of ways of trying to go about this. But I'm going to give you one sort of approach to it here. And you may want to look for other ones. You may find this one doesn't work well for you. I think it's pretty good. There's a lot, though. If you go look online, you can see different ways of doing this. You'll also see people trying to clickbait you with outlandish claims such as learn the entire fretboard in 3 minutes, something like that. Literally a video that says that, or 5 minutes or whatever, you know. And that's not true. You can't memorize this whole thing in 3 minutes or 5 minutes, no matter whatever their system is. It takes more than that. You can learn how to figure out what all the notes are in 3 minutes or 5 minutes, okay? And we'll do that here in just a second. But you can't memorize them all. You can't just immediately, oh, I know what that note is. Oh, I know what that note is. Oh, I know what that. It takes work to memorize these. And, there's not a really, there's no great, tricky little system to doing it. It's something you just have to work at, and it's not easy because there's a lot. But I'm going to try to break it down for you in a couple ways to help you get there a little bit faster. But if you really want to do this, it's just something you're going to have to slog through and figure out how to do, okay? Now, when I said it was optional before, that doesn't mean it's not important, okay? And I really can, testify that it's an awesome thing to know. It's a great tool when you're playing to know what all the notes are. And there's lots of ways that comes into helping you play and helping you learn songs and helping you figure out what chords are. And it's a really great thing to know. But do you need to know it right now in this stage of learning the guitar? Not really. And you can get by without it for a really long time. I played for years. Played in bands, played gigs and stuff. And I knew a good chunk of it, but I didn't know everyone automatically, right? And so, it's no big rush to have to get to that. This is another thing that some guitar courses do that drives me absolutely bonkers, is they try to get people to memorize that too early. And then they don't even use it. And so then they forget it, and they spend all this time with this really difficult memorization task. And they're not playing songs, and they're not doing things that are fun or enjoyable. They're just like, spending their time trying to remember that this is a D and this is an F sharp. And so if it's challenging in a way that is keeping you away from your guitar, don't do it. Okay, let it sit till later. Get some other stuff under your belt so you can play. Okay, it's just not that critically important. It is kind of important to know the ones in the lower part of the guitar, though, down here. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time getting at that, okay? And I really think that's, and it's not too hard either, because it's a much more limited amount of notes that you need to learn. And there's a pattern there too that makes it easier. So, but memorizing all of this, that's a lot of notes, okay? So I don't want to push you into that if it's slowing you down, okay? You don't need to know it right now. What I want to do now, that's all preamble. And what I want to do is to focus on that lower part, okay? Which I'm going to call the first zone. And I'm going to break this up into 4 zones on the neck, okay? And I think that'll help you break this task down a little bit, okay, and make it easier for you. But this first zone, the first zone, is the most important one, okay? And it's the one that it would be helpful for you to know at this point of playing guitar, and it helps you learn the other ones if you know the first zone, if you know all the notes in the first zone, okay? So that's what we're going to focus on first, is the first zone. And the first zone is from open, where the strings are all open, E, A, D, G, B, E, okay? So open, playing all those strings open, up to the 5th fret. So this space in here, open, 1st fret, 2nd fret, 3rd fret, 4th fret, 5th fret. That's our first zone that we're going to try to learn, okay? That's the territory where we do the tuning, right? And we're tuning our notes to these open strings, but also it takes us up to the note of the next string if we're going up the frets, okay? Now, I did talk about this earlier in the course, but I wanted to kind of go over it again to make sure that you've got that part in your head. So recall, if you will, that if I play on the 5th fret of one of my strings, it's playing the open note of the string next to it. So I'm going up my E string, right? And so I start with E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A, 5th fret. On the 5th fret, I'll be playing the note of the string next to it, right? My next string is A, E, A, right? E, A, D, G, B, E, A. And so I've gotten up to A by going up my E string. That's the 5th fret. And so that's the same note as the next string, okay? That's kind of defining this zone, which is I want to learn the notes on this string up until I get to the next string. And then I can play the notes on that string, right? I don't need to keep going up here. I can play them on the next string. right? And so that's the zone that we want to work with. So we go up to the 5th fret on the E string, we've got an A. We go up to the 5th fret on the A string, we've got a D, the next open string. We go up 5th fret on the D string, we're playing a G, which is the next string. And then we've got our little exception. Has to have a little trick in there, otherwise it wouldn't be the guitar. If we go up on the G string, we can't go all the way up to the 5th fret. We'll go too far, okay? The next open string is B, all right? And so when we're going up the G string, go G, whole step to A, whole step to B. We're on the 4th fret and we're already at the next open string, D, G, B. We're already to B, right? We went G, A, B. So we're only on the 4th fret. So you got to remember that exception, okay? Right? B is the 4th fret. When we go up the B string, though, we're back to the 5 fret thing, okay? So we go up 5 frets on the B string, and we're playing an E, which is the open of the highest string, okay? All right, and so that defines this little zone that we're in, okay, the first zone. As we're working on memorizing this, I want you to focus on the letter notes, okay? Not the sharps and flats. Let's just focus on the letter notes, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, okay? We don't want to do the G sharps and the B flats and stuff like that, okay? Those in-between notes. We're going to skip those for now, because if you learn the letter notes, the quote-unquote natural notes they're called, the natural notes that don't have sharps or flats, you will easily be able to find the flats and sharps. If you know where B is, you know where B flat is. It's 1 fret lower, right? It's very easy to find those. If you want to find F sharp, but you know where F is, it's real easy. It's just 1 up from F, right? And so we don't need to try to memorize all 12 of those notes. We just need to memorize the natural ones, the 7 natural notes, and then we'll know where the flats and sharps are, because they're the ones that are in between the other notes, right? Very easy once you have the natural notes down, and it simplifies the task a little bit, okay? So let's just focus on A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, okay? All right, let's go over where these notes are, where these A, B, C, D, E, F, and G are, okay? Let's start with the lowest string, okay, which is, we know, an E, okay? And so we want to find the notes, the letter notes that are on the E string up to the 5th fret, okay? Just up to the 5th fret, all right? And there's only going to be 2 or 3 of these on each one of these strings, okay? So we have the open E. I'm going to go ahead and put this chart up here now, okay? And just look at the lowest string there. And its open is an E, but then the 1st fret is an F. Okay, because there's nothing between E and F, right? So we only go up a half step, 1 fret. So there's our F. Go up 2 to get to G. And then we go up another 2 to get to the A. Okay, so those are the notes on the E string that we need to memorize right now. And it's E, F, G, A, right? E, F, G, and then get to the end of the alphabet letters. G is our last one, and so the next one will be A. Okay? So we've got E, F, G, A, right? So that you want to try to memorize that, get that in your head. But then, picking up on the next string, we're going to hit that one open, and that's an A. So that's the same note that we had before. So you've got kind of 2 different ways of getting to that A if you're going up the strings, right? You go E, F, G, A, or you can go E, F, G, open string A, okay? So you really only have to memorize 2 more on that E string to get that out of the way for this zone, right? E, F, G, A. E, F, G, A, or A here. Same note, okay? That's the first string. The second string, all right, let's just think about this. We've got an A, so our next note is B, all right? And there's a whole step between A and B. So that B is going to be on the second fret. The next note is C. There's nothing between B and C, so it's only a half step. C, okay, that's the third fret is a C. And then C, the next one is D. That's a whole step, C to D. And so that gets us up to the fifth fret again. So again, we've got A, B, C, D, or A, B, C, next string open, D. Okay. So again, we've only got two notes really that we need in this zone. We know that D's there, but we can play it on this string, on the D string open too. So, so now we've got, going from the bottom, E, F, G, A, B, C. Okay? Right? And you're starting to get into some notes that we have in our chords, okay? So just to think back for a second, our G chord, okay? That lower note 3 on the third fret, that's a G, and that's defining the bottom of our G chord. So remember, we E, F, G, there it is. Well, that's in our G chord, okay? Up here we have, on the second, the next highest string there, we have a C note, right? We had A, B, C. Well, C, that's in our C chord. Right? And so you can start to see how some of these fit together as we're learning some of these notes, and you can recognize them from chords that we've learned. Okay. All right. So that's the next highest string, the A string. So we've got basically we've got 6 notes we've memorized at this point. Okay. Only 4 new ones, really. Okay. E, F, G, A, B, C, and then D is our next open string, which we already know from the open string tuning, okay? D, let's keep going. And you can see them on the chart here. D, then E, second fret, that's a whole step. F is only a half step, F, and then we're to G, 5th fret or open on the next string. So we've got D, E, F, G, okay? And then we keep going on the G string. We've got G, A, and then we're already to B. All right, we don't even need to play that one on the 4th string. It's really only one more note we need. G, A, and then B open. Okay. Now, when you're thinking about that, it's worth just noting that on the G string, you've got G, A, B, we're already in the next open string. But with that B on the 4th fret, you know the next one is going to be C, because there's nothing between B and C. And so let's go ahead and try to get that one in our brain too, that there's a C there on the 5th fret, and then we'll have all the notes going across the 5th fret, right? Because we'll have a C there. And with these other ones are just the open string of the next one. A, D, G, then we got a C instead of a B on 5. That's what we were just talking about. Okay, so let's throw that extra one in there and see if we can get that in our brain too. Okay, on the B string though, we've got B, and then we've got C, only a half step for C. So B, C, D, and then we're up to E. E is the open of the next string. So again, we've only got 2 additional notes on there. We've got B open, then we've got C on the 1st fret, D on the 3rd fret, and then we're back to E open. Okay? And if we've memorized what we did down here on this low string, Then we already know what's up here on this high string too, because it's the same thing. You're starting from the same spot, from the E, and so it's E, F, G, and then A again. If there was another A string, we'd keep going, okay? But we're done, okay? So E, F, G, A, just like we had on the bottom. E, F, G, A. Okay? All right. So those are all the notes in that first zone. And really, what you should do at this point, if you really want to get this down, is stop here and memorize that. Spend some time memorizing it. Go over it. Just, get that down, okay? I think that'll really, really help you, okay? Because we're going to use those little patterns to do the rest of it too, okay? So try to get that down cold and then go on to the next part, okay? All right, here's the next part though. If you want to keep going and listen through it, I'll keep going, but you can stop and then just come back to this point in the video. I'll put a timestamp marker down there, and you can just come right back to this point to get started on part 2. Part 2 is about the third zone and the fourth zone, okay? We're going to do the second zone last, okay? So let's talk about the third zone and the fourth zone, okay? And the way we get at the third zone and the fourth zone is to remember that these open strings repeat with the same note but higher up on the octave mark up here. So the 12th fret, we get the same note, E, E on the lowest string. A, open, A up here. D, G, B, E. So these going across are the same thing. E, A, D, G, B, E, right? Same thing. So since you know the open string, you already know the notes on the 12th fret, okay? Same thing, right? And that means everything above that is exactly the same as down here, okay? It's just starting the whole thing over and it repeats going up the rest of the fretboard, okay? So you know that this is an F now. If you did the zone 1 stuff, you know this is an F. 1 fret above the open string. Well, 1 fret above the 12th string is also going to be an F then. F. If you know this is a G, you know 3 frets. 3 frets up from the open is a G. Well, 3 frets open from the 12 is a G. Same thing. So once you know this down here, or anything below the octave mark, anytime you know that, you know it up here, right? It's the same exact thing, it just repeats, okay? So now you've got zone 1 down up to the 5th fret, and you've got zone 2 down from the octave marker on up, okay? Now we've only learned the 5th fret so far, but the same logic obviously applies to the rest of it as we get to that, okay? So you've got zone 1 down and zone 4 down, okay? Let's talk about zone 3, okay? What I call zone 3. Now, we just mentioned that you know these on the 12th fret because they're the same as the open strings, okay? So to get zone 3 down, let's go down from those instead of up, okay? We go up to get the repeaters, but we're going to go down to get some new notes, okay? And we're going to go down to the 10th fret, 2 frets down. So here's the octave fret, and we're going to go down 2 and get these notes, all 6 of these notes going across the strings, okay? All on the 10th fret, okay? This is the 12th, so this is the 10th, okay? And it turns out that this is pretty easy, actually, because luckily, all of these notes are also natural notes. No flats or sharps, we just have some more letters that we're going to deal with, okay? And in each case, it's just the letter below the open note, note, okay? So this is an E right here. So 2 down is going to be a D. is just the letter before it in the alphabet. E down to D. Okay. A, right? The second string is A. E, A, G. This one is, the third string is what? E, A, D. Right. D. What's below D? C. Whatever letters before the alphabet. G, fourth one. G, F. Okay. And then we got B. And so A is right before B. And then we've got another E, so another D. Okay? So these ones are pretty straightforward because they're just one lower than these ones we've been working with the whole time we've been in the course. E, A, D, G, B. Well, now we've got D, G, C, F, A, D. Okay? That's what's on the 10th fret. Okay? So that's pretty easy to at least figure out. Now you still gotta, you want to work on, you know, getting that to be kind of automatic in your head, right? But it's pretty easy to know anytime you're going on the 10th fret, you're like, oh, I know that, I know what, I'm going to go to the 10th fret on the G string. Oh, well, that means the note is going to be an F. Because I'm on the G string, I just said I'm going to F on the G string, or I'm going to the 10th fret on the G string, so it's got to be an F, right? That's one of the reasons why I want to always call the strings by their names, by the note, because it helps us know something else. Instead of me just saying the 10th, on the 10th fret of the first string, it's better to say, to know that I'm going to play on the 10th fret on the E string, because then I know, bam, that's going to be a D, right? And that's much more helpful in getting you through this piece of knowledge about what all the notes are on the fretboard. Okay? All right. Now again, I might suggest that this is a point to stop and try to work on memorizing. Okay? So keep trying to memorize that this is D, G, and so on, C, right? Try to memorize those, and at the same time keep reviewing what you have in the first zone, in the first 5 frets, okay? And you add this to it, okay? So try to memorize that. I'll give you some little tricks on that before we get done too, in terms of working on this. But that's it. You know, now we've got this part of the fretboard covered. We've got this part up here covered, and we've got this part covered. Okay, so the only thing that's left is from 5 to 10, and that's zone 2, what I call zone 2. So, you know, take a break and memorize the rest of this, but come back here for this, at this point, to get us to figure out this last chunk here. Okay, which for most people is the toughest chunk because you use it the least in the sense of having to know what the notes are in there. Okay, that's the toughest chunk. But there's really not that much there now. Okay, let me go ahead and start that. So in zone 3, we're moving from the 5th fret to the 10th fret. But let's remember, we already learned the 5th fret when we did the first zone, and we already learned the 10th fret when we did the 3rd zone, right? And so now all we've got is these 4 frets in between them. That's all we've got left to memorize, okay? So that's what you're focusing on in this last little bit here, okay? Now, when we do this chunk, it's not terribly hard either. And the reason is because we're going to get some help from zone 1 to learn these ones in here, okay? We're going to get some help from zone 1. If we really, that's why I wanted you to learn zone 1. If you got zone 1 down, it takes you right into this chunk as well, okay? And it helps you know what's in this chunk as well, because there's a relationship between these 2 zones, okay? Now just think about for a second on the A string, okay? Let's go back to our A string here. A string, we have learned and hopefully memorized by now that A goes A, B, 2nd fret, C, 3rd fret, D, 5th fret, okay? And that's on the little chart we had, okay? But now we can translate that over to the 2nd zone on the lower string, because this is an A, we're playing open, we're going open, 2, 3, 5, okay? So we go up a whole step, then a half step, then a whole step. Well, there's another A we know about, this A on the E string, right? That's the same as the open. And so we just have to do the same thing we already learned for the A string. We do that on the E string starting at the 5th fret instead, and it's exactly the same thing that we already know, right? So A, B, up a whole step, A, B, and then a half step to C, C, and then D, bada boom, right? That's the same thing we did here, A, B, C, D, okay? A, B, C, D, right? And so we've only had to not even learn, but just translate this B and C. We knew this was an A already. We already learned that. We knew this was a D already. We learned that. And so now all we got to do is remember that we go B, C in here and do it up here. B, C. And we've got, B, C, D, right? And then we've got the whole string down, right? Okay, so then you can do the same thing with the D string and the A string, okay? So on the D string, we had D, E, 2nd fret, F, G, right? And so we start with our D on our A string, D, E, F, G, right? So same thing, we just translated the stuff from the B string up to higher frets on the A string, right? So we didn't really learn anything new, we just translated it over from what we already knew when we learned zone 1, okay? Same thing goes on for the rest of them, okay? On the G string, this is why I pushed you a little bit to try to get that C in there, even though the open string is B next to it, but the next note after B is C. So we're on the G string, our C. Well, on the G string we go G, A, B, C. Same thing over here. We just go over G, A, B, C. Right? So it's the same thing that we're doing on the G string. We're doing it on the D string. G, A, B, C. All right? And so again, we just translate what we already know over one string. Right? So we're not really learning anything new when we're memorizing that. We're just remembering to translate it from the lower strings. Right? It's the same thing on the B string and the G string with one little hiccup because of that business with the B string. Okay, so on the B string, we're going B, C, D, E, right? And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to start on the B note, which is 4. So we're starting on 4 instead of 5. That's the little problem. That's the little hitch with the B and the G string. We always got to pay attention to that. But we do the same thing. So we went open, B string, B note, B, C, 1 fret, D, E, 2 frets each for those. So we start on the B on the 4th fret, on the G string, B, C, D, E, right? That takes us to 9, okay? Because we started on 4, so we don't get it to go all the way to 10. So B, C, D, E, B, C, D, E. Same thing, we're just translating it over, okay? But if we want to go all the way to 10 to link up to our zone 3, we got to go one more fret. We're on an E, right? And so E, F. And we had already established that's an F because it's one step below G. So on that string, it's a little bit more complicated, and you got to focus on that one a little bit more. But B, C, D, E, F. F, okay? With the E and the B string, it's the same old thing, right? We have E, F, G, A, which we already know. E, F, G, A, better than that. Okay? But we start with the E on the B string on the 5th fret. E, F, G, A. Right? Okay? And so now we know the notes in this second zone on the B string. Okay? And the only thing we got left now is the high E string, all right, which starts on the A, B, C, D, but we already learned that down here. A, B, C, D, right? A, B, C, D. We already learned that. And so it's always going to be the same on these two strings. So since we already know that, we already know it up here too. A, B, C, D. That's it. And now we've covered all of the notes on the guitar. And they're all mapped out. If you put these three pieces together on the guitar neck, it's the whole thing, right? And then it just starts over again at the 12th fret and repeats the rest of the way up. Okay? That's it. Now, I'm making it sound like a simple, oh, there it is, so easy. Well, it's still a lot to memorize, right? But it's good if you can break it down in those chunks. Do that first one first, and then use your open string notion with the octaves to help you back down to 10, okay, like that, and then fill in by transferring one string to the next on the second area, and you'll have it down, and you'll have all the notes down. The only thing we didn't do is the in-between notes, but if you know, I already said this, but if you know that this is a G, and somebody asks you for a G sharp, well, you know it's just one above that. You know where your G is, so there's your G sharp, right? Or if somebody asks you for a G flat, okay, it's one lower. So as long as you know where all the letter notes are, you can easily know where those flats and sharps are. It's very, very simple, very straightforward, okay? All right, so that's it for memorizing the fretboard. The last thing that I wanted to mention is a way of kind of working on these different little chunks of the fretboard, or the whole thing once you've got it down to, help you speed up your memorization and get you to the notes faster and make you know. And there's a lot of little apps out there for your phone or your iPad that help you do this. And they're pretty, there's some pretty good ones, and I am going to give you a link in the description to one that I like, and it's called Guitar Notes, okay? And so you can find that app. There's a lot of other ones, though. I'm just showing you this one, and it works. This one's pretty good, so I like it because it does a couple different things and allows you to control what's going on in a nice way. But there's other ones. This particular one is available for the iPhone, but there's ones for Androids and things too. This one's available for iPhone and iPad. There's other ones though. So what it does is it puts a little map of the fretboard up here like this, and you can basically do it two ways. One is it'll tell you a note. It'll tell you like C. This is what this one here has, and then you gotta punch the screen where there's a C, and they highlight the screen or the string where they want you to find the C. Okay, so you just hit that on the screen, and if you're wrong, it tells you, and then you got to find the right one, right? And it's kind of a timed thing to help you kind of speed it up. The other way you can play it is that it'll show you a dot on the screen, and you have to say what note it is. Okay, and so this one here, they've got the little question mark there, and you're supposed to identify at the bottom, pick out which one of those the note is. Okay. What's cool about this is that you can control how the notes come at you and which notes and frets it's going to use. So you can limit it to 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever, or all the strings. You can pick. So if you just want to work on the first string to get that one down, you can make it just ask you notes on the first string, or the first 2 strings, or whatever it is that you want to do. You can change that in the settings. You can change which strings. You can also change which notes you want it to ask you. So I recommended that you focus on the letter notes. And so right now this one is set to just do the letter notes. But if you hit that, it'll allow you to add in the sharps and flats too, if you want to, or just any note. So I just want to focus on where the C's and the F's are. Okay, and so you can make it do that, and it'll just ask you for C's and F's in both of the methods of playing the game, basically. I said you can pick strings. You can also pick what frets you want to focus on, and that's why I like this for the way that I have suggested to you about learning these notes, because you can, in the first part, when you're learning zone 1, you can make it just do open to fret 5, and it'll just ask you questions in that territory of the strings. If you want to work on the second zone, or the third zone, the 10 and the 12, you can make it just ask you 10s and 12s. Okay, you can make it ask you just 5 to 10 when you're working on the second zone. Okay, and so you can do whatever it is that you want to configure this for what it is that you're trying to work on memorizing, and that's very handy. And you just take it around with you. You got to break or something, or you're sitting on the train, the subway or something, bam bam bam, you can be sitting there practicing memorizing where the notes are and trying to get faster and faster at it. So those I think are a really good tool for helping you learn these things. Last thing I'll say is you can make a manual version of this thing too. That's what I did back in the day when I was learning. We didn't have apps, we didn't have smartphones, we didn't even have cell phones, and so what I did was I made a bunch of flashcards where I printed out, I made a graphic of a guitar neck, it was just a grid, with frets and strings, and on each one of them I made a dot in a different place on the fretboard, and I would flip through them, I'd mix them up and flip through them. They were flashcards basically, and and it would help me learn what those notes were. So you can do it in a manual way like that too. If you're not into the electronic kind of way of going about this, you can do that yourself. And then you can pick out the first to the 5th frets. Just pick out those particular flashcards and focus on those. You're having trouble memorizing the ones on the 8th through the 12th fret or something. Just pick out the flashcards that have those ones on it, and go through them, carry them around with you and go through them. So there's a lot of ways to sort of come at this, but I think this approach is one decent way of doing it. Again, I'll just end off by saying you don't necessarily really need to know this right now. And so if after watching this you think, that's a lot, I don't know if I want to do that, don't. Or don't get tripped up on this. This is not something to slow you down or to, make this into a task or boring or something. Just skip it and go on to the next lesson. You'll be all right. And you can come back to it later. So, okay? All right, everybody. That's it for this lesson. See you next time for capos.